All right, we are live. Let's see, live stream is going on YouTube as we speak. I think I got it. I think it works seamlessly now. Gen Xers and technology. Who'd have thunk it?
And we're live on Facebook?
I don't do the live Facebook stream. That was always you.
Oh, well, I didn't do it this time.
How have you been, Sal? How's working as a roulette dealer been?
Yeah, I graduated from roulette school, and
Look at you.
yeah, I went on. I went on to a roulette table. I'm doing a really good job.
You like it?
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's a job. No matter what you do, everything is a job.
That was a ringing endorsement for the casino world. Chris, how have you been?
I've been good. I was actually in a few casinos last week. I went to Vegas for a few days for just a solo birthday trip. It was a last second thing, and I just decided, screw it. I'm going to go out there for a few days for my 54th birthday and just
Enjoy
it.
Happy birthday. I was waiting for an invite. I'm like, I'll join you out there. It's a cheap flight.
It was awesome. Well, I only had a king size bed, so.
Oh, no wonder my back.
So
I probably could have sprung for my own hotel.
I had a great time. I did not play any roulette, but I was reminded I used to enjoy gambling. I still like playing poker with my friends. I like doing some sports betting, but I was walking by a blackjack table, lost $100 in about a minute and 37 seconds. And I'm like, this is why the hotels are so big out here, because
Vegas doesn't look the way Vegas looks because they lose money at the casinos.
No,
right,
they do not.
Right.
And every one of your friends that goes to Vegas and comes back saying how wealthy they are and how much money they've made and how they've crushed it, they are very lucky or they're all liars.
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
Pants on fire. I'm seeing. There we go. You got a happy birthday for Michelle, Chris.
Oh, thank you. Hey, thanks. I appreciate that,
4
Michelle.
years old, you caught me. Well, since Michelle has joined us and we officially have a live studio audience, it's as good a time as any to welcome everybody to the Three View Mirror podcast. That podcast where every week or so, depending on how busy our crazy lives are going, the three of us get together as honest, good to golly friends that met in a digital world and have yet to meet in the real one. But we get together and we talk about things. We talk about things from the 70s, from the 80s, from the 90s, from the era that we all grew up in as Gen Xers. And we talk about the pop culture stuff that helps shape who we are and the things we love. And most importantly, every week we trade the hosting duties to one of us. And this week it's me. And I've come up with 3 topics that we're going to talk about. And what Rochelle and my buddy Chris don't know is there is a hidden connection between these 3 topics that once you kind of think it through and bring it together, you'll discover that something ties them together. And we'll reveal that at the end of our hour. Now, my 3 topics this week will soon be revealed. But before we get on to that, I want to introduce my co-host, starting with you, Shell.
Hi, I'm Rochelle O'Black, and I'm better known online as Gen X Shell. You can find me all over social media. Look me up.
And I am Chris Clues, better known as Chris Clues. And yes, I'm a keynote speaker and author. And yes, it was my 54th birthday last Saturday. I am 1 year away from being closer to 70 than 40. Kind of horrifying.
Stop it. You're now officially Mr. Roper's age when he started Three's Company. Congratulations. And I'm John Catrides, better known as Gen X Jono across my media platforms. And this is the Three View Mirror podcast.
And I'm old enough. That's what I say pretty much every Saturday night when I'm at the bar. No, I'm just.
I want to get to know you. Tell me what's your name. It's a good line. It works.
I may use it at some point. It's a good line. Yeah.
I got 3 topics, and my 3 topics today. Number 1 is grunge. Wait, I just had a senior moment. Number 1 is grunge, goth, or preppy. Number 2 is Johnny Depp. And number 3 is a 5-finger discount.
Nice.
So grunge, goth, or grunge, goth, or prep, Johnny Depp, or the Five-Finger Discount. What do you think?
It rhymes in a weird way that I think.
In a weird way. It was so hard for me to say it.
I know we're all going to do this all throughout the podcast today.
Grunge, goth, or prep is where I'm going to start, because those were like the three. Yeah, there was punk, but I think other clothing, fashion stuff that we wore all kind of borrowed from those three. And I think I can, maybe not so much goth. I definitely had a preppy stage, definitely had a grunge stage for sure. I still love my flannel, like most Gen Xers. But that's kind of where I want to start. What is your thought? We can delve into Gen X fashion. We can move beyond that. But I figured it'd be a good place to start, because I realize that when we talk pop culture, we really haven't dived into fashion.
Dove into.
What was the word I'm looking for? We haven't dove. We haven't dove into.
D-O-V, dove. Just
we
dove.
haven't dove. The past participle doesn't sound correct.
You haven't dove. We haven't dived.
I think we have not yet divin into.
No, it's not divot. It's not a word.
It is.
No,
Studio.
Divot like.
Divin,
Not a word.
We've not yet dove into. It sounds so weird.
Yeah.
We've not yet covered fashion.
There it is.
Yeah.
So
That's how you
round up to Kristen and BJ and Chris and Michelle and everybody in our live studio audience. Lots of birthday wishes to you, Chris. And Kristen is shooting back that, okay, it isn't Chris. So maybe today it won't be music.
Maybe.
Yeah, right.
Well, except we
right.
have a little
At
bit in
least-
there.
At least Kristen knows. Kristen knows what that means when Chris is the host. I thought when you said grunge,
Grunge, goth, or preppy?
grunge and preppy, that you were talking about people, not fashion.
Right.
I thought you were talking about the crowds that you went
Okay.
with,
Yeah.
or the whatever. But if you go fashion, we could definitely talk fashion with that too, because all of them had a huge influence, I think, on I'd say the late 80s and into the 90s, especially because of the grunge.
Yeah. And I also want to point out that now I am old enough to date all of the Golden Girls. Yeah, I mean, I think this is where Kristen was talking about the music, and I'm going to bring it back to the music when we start talking about this, because I have talked a lot about how what was cool about growing up in the 80s and even in late 70s and the 80s is that you had so many groups who were identified by their clothing. And
Yes.
that clothing identified what type of music you listen to. Maybe that's still around today. I don't have kids. You guys would have to tell me, but I know for sure we had definite groups of people based on fashion. The fashion would dictate the music.
So the preppy, I think, stands out a little bit, but I guess you could say pop music would be more closely associated with the preppy look, more vanilla, middle of the road type stuff. Grunge, Seattle music, the whole coffee shop scene, the Nirvana, the alternative, absolutely. And goth, without a doubt, had a sound. You could hear goth when a girl walked in with the shoe polished black hair and the black nails and the black shirt and the black pants it was a thing for sure. What were you guys, and when was it you?
I didn't have a lot of that where I was. There
No?
was not a huge goth crowd where we were at all.
Well, you grew up in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania.
Right. I think, and where I was, everybody would have been somewhat afraid to. It was a small school environment kind of thing. Somewhat afraid to identify themselves being something different. If you put on a flannel, you weren't changing your persona to show that you were a goth. If you put on a upturned collar preppy shirt, yeah, you were saying you were a preppy, but you weren't changing who you were, like you said.
So, the greatest example I can think of off the top of my head, when we look at Breakfast Club, you had the preps, you had the goth, and you had the grunge. They were all represented right there. And I think there's extremes, but I think that movie did it without laying into the extreme too much. So, yeah, I think goth, where it goes way, way into the vampire look, maybe wasn't as big in my school, but we definitely had kind of like the Breakfast Club version of it.
Yeah, you had, and you could argue that Bender could have technically been a metalhead because grunge really wasn't around when the Breakfast Club came out. It was more, he would have been more geared potentially towards metal. I don't know if he would have been as far as like Slayer and Megadeth and Metallica, but he would have definitely been, probably, I would imagine, like maybe Black Sabbath, that type of stuff. And I would say, like, for me, where I grew up, we also had the breakdancing crews. So there was a heavy influence where I went to school with a lot of the kind of early hip hop fashion as well. So that was a piece of it for where I was. But we definitely had the goths also. I didn't really fall into any category, to be honest. Like, I did wear.
You didn't have an Izod Lacoste shirt?
I was not a prep. Don't say
like it's a thing, Slater.
Well, once I was able to choose my own clothes, I wasn't. I should say when my mom was dressing me, I was probably a little preppy. But then once I was choosing my own clothes, I was geared more towards like skateboard, surfer culture.
I was just about to say that the skateboarding culture, the thrasher culture, was a huge influence where I was. And so I would say, because grunge, I don't even think really made its way into high school until. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
What happened?
What happened? What always happens? See, this is what normally gets cut out of the show.
But this is the live, and this is what we have to live with. Yeah, somebody came to my front door, rang the doorbell, and it said, "Someone's at the front door." I don't think grunge really came in yet. We had more of the thrashers and the metalheads, and we actually shortened that name down. The people that wore the metal clothing that was like maybe a precursor to the grunge with the flannels and the rips and the things, like kind of a cross between punk and grunge, where we just called them heads. Like, we didn't actually call them metal heads. We were just known as heads. Yeah, that's the heads. The group's known as the heads.
Got it.
The preps, the jocks, I can't tell you what we said about the band. It just wasn't appropriate. So,
you got to remember Gen X though too. So first of all, with grunge. So I think of my upbringing. My upbringing really, when I grew up, takes me into probably 25, 26. Like my 20s, my college years, those are formative years for me. A lot of my personality was formed after high school. I was until probably my junior year, I was fairly dorky. Talked about it. I didn't really come into my own as far as confidence and whatever looks I was able to develop, right? That came like my junior year. So really my freshman, sophomore year of college was really me expressing who I became, because my friends in high school still remembered me as the brainy, dorkier version of me, even though I didn't necessarily look like that anymore. So for college, I definitely had the whole grunge thing. I had millions of flannels and ripped jeans. I wore the cargo shorts with the big ass boots, whether at the Timberlands and the chunky socks, and totally embraced it. Flannel around my waist at all times. I mean, it was a big deal for me, and it was comfortable. I liked it. I really felt it felt comfortable to me, and I also liked the counterculture that it represented, because grunge was just like a big FU to corporate America. We got out of college, we couldn't find jobs, there was nothing there waiting for us, and we're just like, screw you. And I kind of like that.
See, I was a little bit more with Chris in a way that you couldn't identify who I was based on my clothing, because a lot of times it was just whatever was available, whatever was mildly in fashion. You weren't never totally out of fashion, but you didn't have the money maybe to be in fashion and get the stuff from the expensive stores and whatever. But and it's funny that you mentioned the fashion thing, because I actually just did a thing on this, for a video that from the time I was probably 16, 17 years old, my favorite style of clothing was bodycon clothing. And bodycon is just, look, tight shirts, no matter what you do. I've worn tight clothes, whether it be jeans, shorts, shirts, dresses, my entire life. And I'm kind of worried here heading into the, being 51, that there might be a time when I need to hang up my tight clothing.
I don't know. I think tight holds everything where it belongs. Tight might not be a bad thing as we get older.
But that,
Somebody asked if we embrace the flannel Seattle grunge scene. And I think for me, I'll just say one more quick time. It was embracing the feel. Like, it wasn't just the clothes, it was the counterculture of the music. And all eyes were on us. You can see documentaries, there was movies coming out at that time that really expressed it. And it was just like preppy was one thing. It expressed the 80s and that. And yeah, so I guess a little bit.
Yeah, you had the movie Singles that was like a big one in the early 90s that really kind of put a lot of the Seattle grunge on the map for people that may not have known about it. It's a really good movie as well.
Yeah, I love that movie.
But I was like, I was the same. Like I wore so much. I mean, I wore some stuff that I look back and I think that was kind of cool. Then I look at other stuff. I'm like, I wore parachute pants. Why the hell did I wear parachute pants? What was I? And Jams with the really bright colors. So I was, I would say that I probably touched on a lot of different ones except for goth. I was never into the goth thing, but I liked the music. So I liked the music that was represented by the goth culture. I just wasn't in the goth culture.
Got it. Well, the other thing I'll say is as far as the grunge a little bit, that was probably, you mentioned something really interesting, Chris, when you said when you picked your own clothes. Like throughout middle school and grade school, our parents picked our clothes. Even into high school, my parents stopped picking my clothes. They told me what I was allowed to wear and not allowed to wear if I wanted to get to, but I was never that kid that was a problem. But I think in high school, my friends picked my clothes. Like I was very much a conformist. I wanted to look like all my other friends looked. So when they were wearing polo shirts, I was wearing polo shirts. When it was T-shirts and Umbros with, somebody mentioned boxers showing, Umbros with boxers showing outside was like a thing forever for me.
Yeah,
so definitely my friends chose what I wore through high school. College, I think for the most part, I picked for myself.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember, my first suspension from school was for a shirt that I wore that said "Who farted," and I got suspended for it because apparently it disrupted the class. I don't know.
Only if you actually farted, I would guess.
Right, but anyway. That was my sense of fashion. Once my parents gave me the okay to get my own stuff, that's what I did. Went to Spencer's Gifts and got a Who Farted shirt and got suspended.
You rebel.
So.
Now, Shal, you said something about thinking of it as people. Expand on that for a minute. We got a couple more minutes. I want to see what you had to say about that.
We lived in a time where, and I don't know if it still exists as much today. I know today they have like emo and different people like that, but it seems like we're a little bit more of a melting pot, where back then you were definitely in a clique. And it was really hard for you to bust out of said clique, whether you dressed the part or didn't dress the part. You couldn't bust out of those cliques. It was who you were pegged as. And the fashion, like you said, you dressed like your friends, then you were pegged as a head, you were pegged as a preppy. You dressed like those people simply because that was the clique you were in and you weren't getting out of it.
All right. Agreed. Now, some of us, and I think you and Chris probably both are like this, we tended to navigate between different groups. Mm-hmm. I wasn't specifically in one group. I navigated through many of them and had friends, whereas some of my friends really stuck to their clique. I was one of the few that navigated in and out and pretty seamlessly and easily went and hung out with whom I wanted to when I wanted to. Now, as a kid in high school, sometimes that caused issues. Why are you sitting with them? What's going on? But for the most part, it was just what it was for me.
Yeah, it was what Grace said in Ferris Bueller when she's talking about, Ferris and how popular he is.
Yeah.
He's very popular, Ed. The sportos, motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebies, dickheads, they all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude. Uh-huh. I mean, that really tells you what you need to know about high school in the 80s and even I'm assuming into the early 90s. There were all these different groups. I can't speak for today, but we were definitely different, and we were definitely there was an explosion of individuality. I know it existed in the 60s and in the 70s, but it really splintered like the music and the movies in the 80s, just all these different types of groups. It was actually pretty cool. When you look back, if you look
back at photos from like say 60s, 70s, I will say, and before, in the high school yearbooks, there was a whole lot more conformity in
Yeah.
those days. I think the 80s were the beginning of a busting out of, conformity that formed the cliques. And then eventually the cliques did, weren't as big of a thing. But I think that busting into that non-conformist role made it so that the cliques became possible. So if I had to judge,
sorry, I just can't sit anymore.
if I had to judge where cliques came from, it might have been as a legacy result of the 60s and 70s and the true conformity that was throughout there. All the girls had to be.
I think you're right. I think it started in the 70s, and to Chris's point, it really exploded in the 80s.
Yeah.
Now,
there was even a great punk band named Corrosion of Conformity.
oh, really?
Yes, they're a really good punk band, Corrosion of Conformity, and that's exactly to Shell's point, that corrosion of conformity that happened in the 80s.
So now when we look at preppy and grunge and goth, you can look at somebody like Johnny Depp, and you remember his 21 Jump Street days when he was very much a pretty boy and very, very preppy. And then you look at Edward Scissorhands, and there's the goth, and I'm sure somewhere in between there, you'll find an image of him wearing flannel and representing that singles, Reality Bites feel of that era. And I think that's a great segue, because people like him that were prominent in our pop culture showed the representations of all of those things in the movies that he was in. And I think we saw all of it represented in the movies. So we'll position ourselves over into topic number 2 and talk about Johnny Depp a little bit, who I think is a Gen Xer. Pretty sure he falls under the 1965 to 1980 demographic.
Yeah, for sure.
No.
He
is actually 61. Okay. So Johnny Depp, although we'd be happy to adopt him as a Gen Xer, he would be what they call Generation Jones, or Depp is a baby boomer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But we claim him because, like a lot of those people, the characters he played, and when he played them, probably did fall under Gen X, and it was a big part of what we watched growing up. What do you guys remember when it comes to Johnny Depp?
Well, he
my
was
first introduction to Johnny Depp, of course, it's in the comments right here from Michelle, was Nightmare on Elm Street. Although at the time, I didn't know that was Johnny Depp. I just knew that there was this gorgeous boy laying in a bed, and suddenly he was in a fountain of blood. But that's the first introduction that I had to Johnny Depp. I'm sure he did stuff beforehand.
That's probably my first view of him as well. Chris?
Yeah, mine. I mean, looking back, it would have been Nightmare on Elm Street, but I just didn't recognize it in the same way that Shell and maybe the girls would have recognized Johnny Depp in Nightmare on Elm Street. I just saw him as another victim of Freddy Krueger. So for me, it was more 21 Jump Street. That was what got on my radar, is this like cool guy, and it was a fun show that I really enjoyed. So I think that was when it got.
I liked it too. That was with Richard Grieco. There was a number of different people on it, actually, that had some legs. And the show itself was obviously remade later into a movie, so it went beyond our generation.
And by the way, somebody Irish mentioned What's Eating Gilbert Grape, which is a fantastic movie.
Yes.
And do you see early on, not Johnny Depp aside, who's great in it, but Leonardo DiCaprio, man, when you see that movie, you realize like he just had it from a very young age. He was supposed to be an actor. He's just had it. But yeah, that's a great call on Gilbert Grape. Yeah,
Gilbert Grape was fantastic. Leo was who I remember most from that one. I don't even know if I knew Johnny Depp was in it.
Yeah, he's the brother.
Oh, he's the older brother.
Yeah.
I don't remember that part of it. I just remember pieces of the movie. I have a little confession though.
Don't tell me you've never seen it.
No, I've seen Gilbert Grape. I loved Gilbert Grape. Okay. But I've never, ever seen a single episode of 21 Jump Street.
Oh, it's so good. It's a good show.
It's bad, too. It's good, but it's also really, really bad, which makes it really, really good. It was a product of its era, without a doubt. There's the MTV style footage where it's like quick clips back and forth, and they integrate the music. It's 21 Jump Street was something that lives and dies in the era it was filmed in. Yeah. And Johnny Depp looked like somebody who could be in high school.
Yeah, for sure.
Wait, I've seen more episodes. Speaking of like the cop kind of a show in those eras, I've seen more episodes of Cop Rock than I did
Wow.
of 21 Jump Street.
Even though Johnny Depp was in it, Richard Grieco, wasn't he? You didn't like The Boys?
I don't know what year did that show come out.
80,
I might have been in a different spot. in my life.
87, maybe 80.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, about 87, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
But I mean, listen, for my money, like one of the very few, we'll call it quote unquote remake. The 21 Jump Street movies are awesome with Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill. They're so good. And Ice Cube. I mean, just like I think they're great. I'm a huge Johnny Depp fan. I really, somebody mentioned earlier, I mean, Captain Jack Sparrow. And I heard a story that some of it, the movements and all he got from Keith Richards, if I'm wrong, maybe Mick Jagger, Keith Richards. But anyway, when they first started filming it at Disney, was freaking out because they're like, this is not who we picked. This is not the character we pictured. And he basically said, like, this is who Jack Sparrow is going to be. And man, did it work.
It did.
Well, and Disney swapped out everything. It's if you go through the Pirates of the Caribbean, there's Johnny Depp right there in the animatronics.
It worked.
Yeah.
Never seen any of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Oh,
Those are good.
the
Those
first
are
one is amazing. The first one's so good.
Yeah, they're really good.
Couple confessions. Never saw Pirates and absolutely thought, as much as I like some of Tim Burton's stuff, Edward Scissorhands I thought was the dumbest thing ever. I hated it. Really.
Where
I mean,
him and Winona met.
there's Winona Ryder, Anthony Michael Hall.
That's when him and Winona, because they dated for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, they dated. He put her name on his eye, and he got a tattoo
That's
that
right.
said Winona Forever, and then had to change it. It got covered in design. I don't remember what he changed it to.
Yes, they were a couple. I remember hearing it from Edward Scissorhands.
I love Edward Scissorhands.
Really? I couldn't think that. Why did he have Scissorhands?
I watch it every Christmas.
It's a Christmas movie in your
I
mind?
was just
Well,
about
it's
to say the
snowing.
same thing.
You know, it's Tim Burton. That's why he had scissors for hands. I mean, I'm sure we could dive deep into a lot of the analogies and maybe what Tim Burton was trying to say, but Tim Burton, he's really good with creating the outcast and the person that is judged in a way that's, unfair, or, somebody who's been thrown out of society for whatever reason. And he does that really, really well. And by the way, Johnny Depp was great in Sleepy Hollow with Tim Burton.
Yeah. Wino Forever is what he changed his tattoo to.
Did he really?
That's, according to Irish, instead of saying Winona Forever, it's Wino Forever.
Really?
Well, given the court case that followed most recently, it seems like he may have made that happen.
I was just about to say him and the Amber Heard and the court case with Amber Heard.
Oh.
The one thing I will say about that, because I'm not getting into any of that, the one thing I'll say is that I sort of followed that case a little bit because it gave us more than Johnny Depp's characters. It gave us Johnny Depp as a man. It gave us Johnny Depp as a person. And a lot of times we romanticize the characters, the Edward Scissorhands or the Jack Sparrow, but behind that is a man and his relationships and his faults, failures, successes, all of it. And I followed that mostly so that I could have a deeper look into him as a person.
Well, they're both a mess. To be honest,
Not saying that, I'm not saying any opinion about it, but I like when Hollywood lets us know what someone is really like what they're
The
really
only part of that mess of a trial that I saw was, what's her name? Heard?
Amber Heard.
Amber Heard.
I know what you're going to say.
The bee thing.
Yeah.
The stung by a bee, and it was like all over TikTok. That one thing became like a meme when she's talking about the dog stepped on a bee or something. It was everywhere for about a week. No, oh my God, she made this face. It was god awful. Irish says Lethal Weapon and Die Hard are Christmas movies too. Well, those are. Well, Lethal Weapon, Die Hard without
Lethal Weapon, absolutely. Yeah, Lethal Weapon is. Yep. So is Gremlins.
Gremlins for sure.
Yeah. No, I there's another one with Johnny Depp that you may have missed. And if you did miss it, I would say go back and watch it. And it's called From Hell, and it's the Jack Ripper story. And he plays the inspector trying to track down Jack the Ripper.
I saw that one.
And it's really good. I'm a huge fan of the Hughes brothers. They're the ones who directed it, and they're like, super talented. If you enjoy, like they kind of came onto the scene with Menace to Society back in the early 90s, and they did Dead Presidents. And anyway, I don't want to get too deep into that, but I would just say From Hell is a Johnny Depp movie that you might have missed that I would recommend.
The other thing I wanted to hit on with Johnny Depp is, although he's not a Gen Xer, he falls in that category, like kind of right between. I don't think anybody looks at Johnny Depp and thinks of him as a typical baby boomer. I don't think he has that stereotypical baby boomer energy. But Johnny Depp is what a 61-year-old looks like today. That's a representation, just one. And I know we all age differently, but I don't remember there ever having been a representation like a Johnny Depp as a 61-year-old back when we were growing up. You can definitely make a case that not all 61-year-olds are Johnny Depp. I get that. But back when we were growing up, 61, 51 had a look. And the mold is broken. And I think that's a really good thing. I mean, Shell, you're going to be able to wear tight clothes well into your 70s if you choose to.
Wait a minute. I will. I mean, that's just who I am. It's not changing. I will be doing that from now. They're going to bury me in something 3 sizes too small. That's the way it's going to work.
You're going to be very popular at the Villages then.
Me and my golf cart.
Irish just brought up Sweeney Todd as well and From Hell, and it made me think about how one of the cool things about Johnny Depp, and I kind of see this in Brad Pitt as well, is that they're willing to take on roles where it wasn't about how pretty they were. And that's, I got to imagine, like, you have to really be into the craft to do that. If you're as pretty as those two guys are, and you're willing to say, I'm not going to trade on my looks every single time. In fact, I'm going to find these characters where they don't have anything to do with my look. And I think Johnny Depp's done that even more than Brad Pitt. But I admire that because Hollywood is what it is. And the ability to be able to say, I'm going to, transform myself and I'm not going to just trade on these looks, that says something. You have to be into your craft to be willing to do that.
I highly respect Brad Pitt, as just everything. I love a lot of his stuff, but he primarily did his looks. He doesn't do ugly movies.
Well, he has 12 Monkeys.
He was still gorgeous in 12
Come
Monkeys.
on, are you kidding me? No, he was not.
No, he wasn't. He was not pretty in 12 Monkeys.
He had that face still.
Oh my God. I think you were seeing the face still.
Yeah,
it wasn't there.
Yeah. Well, but anyway.
Yeah. He hasn't done it as often, but he does play, like in Snatch, he played the gypsy boxer. And of course they show him with his shirt off in a boxing ring, but still he played like these kind of, I don't know, like not exactly like a shower a day type of characters. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
But nothing as transformative, I would think, as Edward Scissorhands.
Correct.
So,
yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
So looking at pop culture and movies today, television today, who is the current counterpart to someone like a Johnny Depp? Looking at the movie roles he took, running the gamut from Pretty Boy, regular, very vanilla stuff, all the way to Edward Scissorhands, to a Disney franchise, to a real court case mess, you could argue was a role. Michelle seems to have an idea.
Zac Efron.
Who?
Zac Efron. You're asking who?
Oh, because he played Ted Bundy, right?
I think Zac Efron has played a multitude of characters from Pretty Boy to in that same thing. I think Zac Efron is pretty amazing, actually.
I would have two. One would be Jake Gyllenhaal.
Good point. Good one.
You've seen him in like Nightcrawler and these other movies that are pretty like intense. And then the other one for me would be Matthew McConaughey. I mean, he's played some roles where, like, I mean, Dallas Buyers Club, where he won the Academy.
Yeah, I'm saying not exactly contemporary. I think that was a contemporary of Depp's. To Shell's point,
Oh,
I'm like,
I see what you're saying. Okay, got you. Is that okay? Sorry.
just wondering if there is that mold, if it still exists,
Yeah,
still there. And I think Zach, I'm not diminishing what you're saying in any way.
yeah.
In regards to that discussion,
Yeah.
I like what Shell brings up because that's a great example of someone
Yeah.
still willing to do that.
Mhm.
His face did a weird thing though for a minute or two, didn't it? He went from looking one way to just something.
Yeah, it did do a little weird thing. You know who else too? The kid that just played Elvis,
Oh, yeah.
Austin Butler.
Austin Butler. I think Austin Butler is also, he's pretty amazing in that respect too.
Yeah, except he didn't seem to be able to leave the Elvis affectation. He still sounds like Elvis in every movie he's made since. I saw like a World War II era film with him in it, and he's a pilot, and I don't remember what the movie was. It was a great movie.
Oh, it's
But
not a
he's-
movie. It's a series on Apple TV.
It was a series on Apple TV. He
Masters
still
of Air.
sounds like Elvis in it.
He does. Yeah, he is. Yeah, Masters of Air, which is a very good show.
Yes, it was excellent. And I'm like, am I the only one thinking this?
No.
And I did. And everyone's like, everybody picked up on it. He had vocal coaches that taught him to speak like Elvis, and it stuck.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think Zac Efron's a great because he played Ted Bundy, right?
He did, I think.
Yeah.
That sounds right. And he was in Baywatch, critically acclaimed.
Mhm.
He probably is. You're right. He's probably the most contemporary. I said Jake Gyllenhaal, but he actually isn't too far. I mean, he's probably in his mid 40s, so he's not exactly.
Late 40s.
Yeah. Yeah. You probably picked the best one, I'd imagine, in terms of trying to go back.
Austin Butler's a good one, too. Who would be the female equivalent of Johnny Depp, either today or back then? Would it be Winona?
No.
Because, I mean, she played some very different roles.
For me, I think Angelina Jolie has done some amazing stuff and put herself into different roles and different characters. But me personally, I absolutely adore Juliette Lewis. I think Juliette Lewis from I know your face is a little whatever, but from the time she was a kid, in Cape Fear. I think she has done things, and then she was just recently in Yellow Jackets. I think was and
Charlize Theron. Yeah, but would you say though that she's like traditionally beautiful? Like this is what we're talking about with Johnny Depp and Brad Pitt and like traditionally Charlize Theron who played in Monster. Like traditionally.
Are you saying Juliette Lewis isn't beautiful?
I think
No,
Juliette
I
Lewis
don't
is
think
pretty,
she's
but I don't think of her as like I don't put her in the category of like the beautiful people. But
No, she's not. She's not Charlize Theron. Yeah.
Yeah, Charlize.
Ryan, I still can't talk today.
She did Monster.
Yeah.
Monster, and she looked amazing. And
Yeah.
I mean, not amazing, and amazing as this manly looking woman, serial killer in Monster, and her transformation, I think, was amazing.
I just like actors and actresses that, for lack of a better term, can be chameleons. That we'll see them. Brad Pitt does it. Johnny Depp did it.
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman is the chameleon.
Absolutely. I just find that really amazingly interesting when an actor disappears into a character and you no longer like. I have not seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but I've seen enough to know that when he's on screen, that's Jack Sparrow. To your point, Chris, it wasn't even supposed to be. He changed what Jack Sparrow was. He created it out of thin air, and that's it. When he's there, that's who it is. Edward Scissorhands, he was a completely different person. And even What's Eating Gilbert Grape, he was the penultimate older brother, the protected. He transformed into the part, and I love that about him.
Yeah, I'm still like my brain is still thinking about the actresses that are chameleons like that, because I know there are quite a few that can do that you would say are traditionally beautiful, and then suddenly they're in these roles. You're like, wow, they, doesn't even look. I will tell you who may be heading in that direction. If you have seen, I think it's on Netflix, the show Griselda, about the cocaine. She was like the head of one of the cartels back in the early 80s, and drove a lot of cocaine in Miami. Sofia Vergara played her.
Really?
And I'm telling you, you can see it's Sophia in her eyes, but wow, like the transformation, she's like very, she's lived a life. Let's put it that way. She looks very beat up and ragged, and she's smoking cigarettes. She may be heading in that direction because she did a great job with that character.
Who's Justin Timberlake married to? Seventh Heaven?
Jessica Biel.
She did a movie on Netflix.
Yeah.
And that was transformative. I did not recognize it was her until like halfway through the first episode. It was a series.
That's actually, it was called. I know what you're talking about, but yeah, she could do that because she's stunning, and then she can do those roles where she doesn't. It's a good one.
All right. Well, so far we've talked about grunge. I can't do it.
And goth. Grunge,
grunge, goth, and prep.
Yeah.
Moved on to Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
And now I want to talk about a little something called the 5-finger discount. The idea of thievery, stealing, shoplifting. I've got kids. I don't know. It was, I don't want to say, it was very prevalent both in my life with my friends in the 70s and 80s. It was part of our culture where as a kid, if you got caught by a parent shoplifting, I can tell you personally as an experience, it was a common occurrence where the parent would drag you back to that store and make you fess up and apologize and take what you had coming. That was me. My mom still tells me up until like the age of 5, I not only stole for myself, I took 2 of everything so my older brother would have 1 to play with. She's like, I couldn't keep up with you. You were like 3 and you were like this master thief. And she's like, it didn't matter how many times I brought you back or spanked you or smacked you or took things away. And she couldn't break me of it. And it even permeated our pop culture, movie scenes where the kids are stealing stuff, stealing porno magazines because you were too embarrassed to buy them. And yet you wanted that Playboy. I mean, it just goes on and on. It was kind of a big deal for me growing up, both personally and in terms of my friends and what I saw out there in pop culture. What are your feelings around it, memories around it? Have at it.
I will say that the only time that I actually ever lifted something with a 5-finger discount, it was at 7-Eleven. So little did I know back then that 7-Elevens are franchises. This is not a big corporate conglomerate. Now looking back, I feel awful that I did because there was somebody making a living off that store. However, we got the idea that you could get a Big Gulp, and you could put candy bars in the Big Gulp, fill the Big Gulp up, pay for the Big Gulp, and then you would have a Snickers and a Milky Way or whatever outside because they would fit right into the
stuff.
What's that?
Wasn't it underneath the soda?
Yeah, but it's wrapped. It's in a wrapper.
Oh, all right.
And back then we didn't think about everybody's hands who had been on that wrapper before. We didn't give a shit. We just, we ate it. But that was, I feel, I don't feel.
That was the only time you ever stole anything?
Yeah, there's the only time I felt so guilty that I
really
caught.
God, I'm a bad person.
No.
Not anymore. But I mean, Shel, anything we talk about, I'm relatively certain I've done the research. The statute of limitations in Pennsylvania for shoplifting is up. So you can feel free to speak your truth and let us know. And if I had to guess between the 2 of you, who might have stolen more, my money's on you.
I hate to disappoint you, John.
Come on!
No, I was not. I don't recall stealing anything ever. Like nothing.
Makeup.
I will say
lip
this.
gloss. Lip smackers?
No, I was not. Well, first of all, my family didn't take us many places to go to have said shoplifting experience, but I never stole anything. I was very like by the book kind of a person. I didn't not follow the rules. That was just my personality, and I didn't steal anything. Now, I will say this. Today, as an adult, as a 51-year-old, though, I do more thieving now, technically, than I did way back then. And me, it just happens to be at the grocery store. I feel like I shouldn't have to pay for grapes that suck. So I eat the grapes. I take a grape, like whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not paying for something that's a really terrible product or whatever. So yeah.
So you sample.
So terrible that you eat it.
Yeah.
Well, no, she's sampling.
I'm sampling.
Yeah.
I'm sampling.
I'm waiting to see if our studio audience, if any of
It's gotten very quiet.
very, very quiet over there. But like, I just remember girls, the big ones were like lip smackers, things that, or lip gloss, things that limited funds, but they just needed that. Lip smackers, you don't remember girls and lip smackers? There were all these flavors. It's like a lip gloss, but it was different flavors. You could get Dr. Pepper. Did you not kiss girls like in middle school?
No, I didn't watch Beaches and enjoy it, so I didn't know.
Girls, I don't know what you're talking.
Like lip smackers, I didn't know.
Girls we kissed had different flavors of lip smackers on their lips.
I did not know they were called lip smackers, but again, that's because I wasn't a Beaches guy.
And again, it's because you didn't kiss a lot of girls. Because once you kissed a girl with Dr. Pepper lip smackers on, you knew what they were. It was very.
I kissed the girl and I liked it.
Michelle's pleading the fifth, but it was that. It was the CBS thievery, which is what was big. It was you didn't want to pay for something that smells like Giorgio but isn't. But girls would take it. Girls, I would guess, probably stole more than boys because I think a lot of it were those small, fairly expensive things: the makeups, the lipsticks, the fragrances. I mean, the stuff us guys wanted was techier, bigger. What, I'm going to steal a football and put it somewhere? I mean, Irish says I tried to shoplift a bag of. Whoa, he went fast. Everyone's surprised. Looks like people are starting to confess. I tried to shoplift a bag of Chaw Tobacco Bugler Boy. Got caught and never sat down for a week afterwards.
No, I would say the girls did a little bit more of the stealing, but you had to live or be near, even when we went to the mall, though, I didn't want to be that person who got caught. I wasn't up for notoriety. That was not my thing. I didn't want to be known as that person. Now, I do know of people that got caught shoplifting condoms, things like that.
That's what it was for us guys. Like, I honestly, porn was a lot harder to get our hands on back then than it is for kids today. And yet we were as curious about certain things as any kid ever was. So I grew up in a small town. The only thing worse than getting busted stealing a Penthouse magazine was having to actually take it to Mrs. Bertha sitting at the counter and say, "Hi, I'd like to buy this." Yeah. So when we got to the mall and we were at Walden Books, you would take the Penthouse, you'd put it in the People magazine, you'd pretend to read the People magazine. You kind of go through the stacks. Then somehow the Penthouse would end up in your, down the front of your pants, and you'd go buy the People. Because you're like, oh, they saw me reading the People. I was carrying the People. Now I'm buying the People. I did the good thing. And then you had the magazine.
I never did that.
You know what? I feel like I'm getting to know a whole other side of John here.
Yeah.
Listen, the adrenaline rush for stealing something as a young kid was pretty cool too. I remember we were at like Kaufman's, which predates Macy's in New York, and they had like the watches on display. And I remember I took one. It was like a Christmas display, so it wasn't in the case. It was like a Swatch knockoff, and I took it. And I'm walking around with it, but the entire time I'm walking in the store, I'm thinking I'm being followed. I'm like, this is not going to end well. So then I stash it somewhere, and I'm like, I'm not taking it. Now I don't have it anymore. I'm good. And I start walking around. The guy that's following me is not following me anymore, so I go back and I get it again. And then all of a sudden the person's there again. So then I put it back again. I think that was the last time. I'm like, this is just not worth it. Because at a certain age, when you hit 17, 18, you're like, this is going to end badly now. Now I'm not that kid that mom's going to bring up. Now I'm a felon. So Scott says I got to watch my wallet around you.
Yeah.
It's been that.
Irish called the People magazine over the Penthouse magazine
You
the
gotta,
Goonies cover.
Scott, you got to watch your wallet and your newest issue of Jugs.
Oh, jeez. There were two ways to find porno magazines, three, I guess, back when we were growing up. One was to steal it. One was somebody found their uncle's or their father's stash. And the third was, for some God, I don't know what reason, and I don't want to put a lot of thought behind it, but random issues of pornography just ended up in the woods. You'd be walking along the woods and there.
I wouldn't have touched those.
What?
There's no way.
Not where I grew up.
How could you be desperate enough to touch the one left in the woods? What was on that page? I don't even want to know.
Hey, kids, but I'm just because, like, my guess is a bunch of guys, we build sheds and you build, like, huts in the woods or whatever, and they took it out there to share with everybody. I don't know.
That, I mean,
yourselves in the pages.
wherever, I don't know where you grew up, but when we would find in the woods, we might find like an Iron City beer can.
There you go.
Which was kind of cool when you were when we collected beer cans back in the day, but not that. No.
Well, I mean, 5-finger discount, shoplifting, stealing. Like I said, it permeated the times that we grew up in. And again, it was a time where accountability was a big deal. It was a life lesson. Most of us stole something small as little kids. And the way you learned not to do it was your parent either beat your ass or dragged you back in front of that store and said, hey, he stole this. We're going to make it right. And it was a lesson. If you weren't.
And I think it's a valuable lesson. I actually did that with one of my kids. I won't say which one, but I actually did that with one of my kids when I found out that they had done something like that. I literally, I marched them right back into the store and made them explain it. You know, I think that, and it never happened again. I think that was, you could say what you want about it, the embarrassment or the whatever, but that was a whole bigger deterrent, I think, than any, you know, we weren't corporal punishers, but, you know, any corporal punishment we got back in the day was not as big of a deterrent as the idea of the walk of shame, of a different kind of walk of shame, because there were lots of walk of shames for us when we were kids, you know, whether it would be you were acting up in the store, acting a fool, mom walks you out to the car, you know what I mean? Or there was
What other walk of shame are you? What other walk of shame are you familiar with, Rochelle?
I don't know.
Well, she was the one who was always wearing wasn't it bottom?
That term just like flowed from your lips so easily. Like we all have had the walk of shame.
Walk of shame, yeah.
Going out at 8 in the morning in your club wear. Your hair's like all of
Hair's over here.
With you still have the in your head. Yeah.
Well, Kristen brings up the permanent record fear. I don't even think that's a fear anymore. I don't think, if I told my daughters, what about your permanent record at school? That was a threat that was leveled against us. I don't think I've heard that in years.
Yeah.
It was fake. I don't think I'd like to get my hands on my high school permanent record. That would be fun. Actually, I was such a good kid. Aside from the stealing once in a great while, I didn't get caught though. So it didn't.
The porn.
Yeah.
Well, I never got caught though. Because nobody would believe it of me. Anyway,
you were talking about. Well, you were. Wait, I do want to touch on.
I want to cut it off right now.
Wait.
No one would believe it of you. Literally, if I ever did do that, I think that's why I kept my attitude sometimes the way I did, was nobody would ever believe of me that I might do, because I've done things, you know, stealing wasn't one of them, but no one would
walk of shames apparently were.
Walk of shame apparently. Who us from across the streets like, there's that Rochelle girl again.
Oh, God,
we were talking about
Blanche.
You know, we've talked about our situations, but John, you mentioned movies and things like that as well back then. And so, you know, one of my favorite underrated movies, I've mentioned it probably a few times in the podcast, is 3 O'Clock High. And when Jerry Mitchell, the kid who runs a school supply store, is trying to get out of the fight with the bully, and he steals a bunch of stuff from the school supply store, money actually. And that's a major part of the movie and him trying to get out of that fight. So highly recommend that one as well. But that's a movie scene with stealing, 5-finger discount.
All right, guys. It's 54 minutes and 59 seconds. We just crossed over to 55 minutes of what is typically an hour-long podcast. So it's as good a time as any to review what we've talked about. And I feel as if we've talked about a lot today. We talked about a little bit of 70s, 80s, but mostly 80s and 90s fashion, whether it was preppy, grunge, or prep. Preppy, grunge, or goth. Yeah. Goth, grunge, and prep. I wanted it to rhyme with Depp, and I messed myself all up. Grunge, goth, or prep. We've talked about Johnny Depp, and we talked about a 5-finger discount, a.k.a. stealing porn, among other things, lip smackers, makeup, whatever. You guys feel pretty good about this one?
I got it.
I figured I knew somebody might. This one wasn't one I thought was going to be tough, but I
have it, but we'll see.
How about you, Shell? Do you think you've got it? I love when you think you've got it.
No, I'll be honest with you. This was one of those times when I was not going to come up with some cockamamie like story of like this connect with that and lock.
Cockamamie.
Cockamamie.
Cockamamie. You never heard that word?
Of course I have. From like 93-year-olds.
Not from anybody who's ever done the walk of shame. I see a video series on this, Shell. I need to see you opening a door and like shielding your eyes from the bright sun.
Yeah.
Your lipstick's all smeared.
Your lip smacker, whatever the hell that was.
I was actually going to publish one like that from last week. I kid you not, and I didn't publish it.
Oh.
But I have no, I don't even have any connection whatsoever. All I feel like is it's some sort of a high school movie. I feel like it's a movie connection. It's a high school movie where each of the cliques was represented by the clothing. I feel like Johnny Depp starred in it somehow. And I feel like thievery was a part of it. That's all I got.
Once Chris solves this for you, both you and everybody who's completely lost in the studio audience will be like, how did I not get it? Because it's pretty transparent. Chris, let him in on it.
It's Winona Ryder.
It's Winona Ryder.
Winona Ryder, because with the grunge, the prep, and the goth, it was Beetlejuice, Reality Bites, and Heathers.
Yes.
Oh.
And then Johnny Depp, obviously Winona with the tattoo, and she got busted for shoplifting.
You got busted for shoplifting.
Okay, I mentioned her. I'll give myself a 1/1400th of a point.
No.
Yes.
I mentioned her. I tried to hand it to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, she is absolutely the physical representation of the first topic. Because in Heather, she was this, the Heathers, there was that whole preppy look down to what they were wearing. Although she changed throughout that movie. She didn't stay there, but she absolutely did goth.
That's a great movie too.
Awesome movie. And so is Beetlejuice, which is Beetlejuice comes out tonight. So I definitely thought this would be timely. And then finally, right down to the tattoo that he wore, Johnny Depp was dating her forever. And she famously, in 2001, got busted for shoplifting and almost ended her career because it wasn't like shoplifting for diamonds or anything. It was basically the lip smackers thing. It wasn't expensive stuff. She just was what's the term? Kleptomaniac is what they called her.
Yeah. I forgot that she shoplifted.
I mean, sometimes that stuff is a cry for help too. I don't know what was going on in her life, but I will say this, Reality Bites, obviously great movie. And, I'm a big Winona Ryder fan on a number of levels. And it is because what she did not hurt anybody else. It's really cool to see that Stranger Things just sent her into the stratosphere. We all, as Gen X, knew Winona Ryder, and now this entirely new generation of kids know Winona Ryder.
Yeah.
And it's really awesome. I love it. I love
it. They would go back and I think Beetlejuice will get them to see they'll go back hopefully and see the original. Heathers, I think the generation after us, my older daughter and some younger millennials, they have Mean Girls. which was basically Heather, and very good. Mean Girls is a great movie. I think it's got legs. Heather's was a lot darker.
A lot darker.
A lot darker. If you haven't seen it, it's amazing. Yes, she rehabilitated herself before Stranger Things. She came back. Was in Edward Scissorhands, I think, as well.
Yeah.
With Johnny Depp. That's where they met, we've said. So there's that connection. Plus, she dated him. I wanted to talk about Winona Ryder, whose last name I think I saw was actually Horowitz.
Really?
Her given name is Winona something Horowitz. So what's funny is Winona's the real name. Ryder is not.
And she was also in Mr. Deeds, which Adam Sandler, love Adam Sandler.
We all love Adam Sandler.
Love Adam
Winona
Sandler.
Laura Horowitz. And she is absolutely a Gen Xer. If she ever wants to come on the show, she's got a spot. She was born in 71. She's 52 years old. And according to Kristen, I almost had Lucas be one of my topics today because I wanted to talk about it because I love it. And I was going to have Corey Haim be one of my topics today. There's a million different ways I was going to try to get to her. But Lucas was her first role. And we talked about bullying briefly earlier today, and amazing movie with little Corey Haim.
I love Lucas. I've
never seen it.
It's a great movie, and it's sad at the same time because what you see in Corey Haim, I'm not going to say that Corey Haim was going to go to the same level as Leonardo DiCaprio in terms of talent, but I will say that he was incredibly talented. And when you watch him in Lucas, you see why. You'll see why. Like he just, we talk about the two Coreys and, he became this like good looking kid and, started to, and obviously a lot of really horrible stuff happened, but you see it in Lucas. He does a great job. It's a great movie. Yeah, that was a great call.
Well,
I love that movie.
And you talk about trading on your looks. Corey Haim was one that's all he did. At a certain point, he was just the pretty boy in his characters. Even the two Coreys and the stuff he did with that, he was the good-looking one. That's all it became.
Yeah, but in Lucas, he didn't play that. He played
he was amazing.
He played the nerdy kid, and he did a great job with it. And that was a great. I love it. I mean, I'm a big Winona Ryder fan.
Wasn't Lucas though the start of what the Haims, the two Coreys had claimed about Hollywood? Wasn't that movie in particular the one that?
That's the story. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
You kind of have to put that aside.
I don't want to touch on that. I'm just,
That's okay.
Yeah.
I was going to definitely have Luke, but I thought it'd be too much. If I go Lucas, that was going to be in place of Johnny Depp. I thought the minute we got two Winona Ryder things in there, I'd like too common. But I will say about Corey Haim, I was surprised when I was doing the research because that was going to be my topic. I thought he died of a drug overdose. He died of pneumonia.
Yeah.
His coroner report said he died of natural causes. Now, he did a lot of things that put him in a place where he was susceptible to things like that, but the coroner's report did not show any drugs in his system or anything like that. And up until I started doing research today, I truly thought he died of something drug-related.
And he was actually supposed to be cast in Stand By Me.
Really?
He was going to be he wanted to be Gordy, the main character Gordy, played by Will Wheaton. They wanted him to be Chris Chambers, who was River Phoenix. He didn't want to play the best friend, and then he ended up doing Lucas.
Wow.
So there's a whole thing there with Stand By Me. I would say Winona Ryder, there's very few, there's like some actors and actresses where you look at them and you're like, that she feels like she was a theater kid from a very, very young age. Like she feels like there's nothing else she would have been doing except being an actress.
I could see that.
Yeah.
And I think she's pretty genuinely her in most of the roles I've seen her play. Even Beetlejuice, I mean, the way she sounds, even though how she looks changes, but I enjoy her. I enjoy her everything she does. I love Reality Bites is a quintessential Generation X movie.
Yeah.
It just is. We talk about Mick Jobs and our struggle, and if any Gen Z kids or younger millennials are like, "Well, you'll never understand," I'm like, "Just go watch Reality Bites."
Yeah.
Because it really does a good job of showing you that we're not all that different. Every kid in their 20-somethings goes through something. And you guys are going through it now, but I promise you, you're not the first, you're not the only, and you're not the last.
Yep.
So that's it. Those were my topics. I hope you guys enjoyed them.
No,
Awesome.
I liked it. I thought they were a great connection. And you're right. It was that moment where you're sitting there going, "Really, I didn't get that." But
Yeah.
it was wonderful.
Oh, we talked about it. We talked about the tattoo with Winona Ryder. We talked about Johnny Depp with her a little bit. The first one, I was my attempt at going in a different direction. And I'm like, if I talk about fashion, once you get it, like Chris did, you'll connect. You're like, okay, there's 3 movies that she absolutely envisioned all 3 of those things.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you got it, Chris. That's cool. That was a really cool connection. And I like that you got it from the Fashion Up.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say when you started talking about 5 Finger Discount, I almost said Winona Ryder, but then I kind of like stopped halfway through because I'm very competitive and I didn't want anybody.
Yeah, you didn't want to give it. I do that. I saw the moment when you were going to do that, and then you pivoted.
Yep.
But you were about to say, well, and Winona Ryder actually was shot. And you're like, nope, not giving it to Shell.
Yeah, no.
That's all right.
Yeah, it was
I
awesome.
don't know if I would have still got it. I still don't know if I would have got it because I forgot completely about her shoplifting.
Right, but he was going to say that she shoplifted.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Then I would have recalled it then.
Yeah, we'll see.
You know,
Which is why he didn't.
I still don't know if I would have got her with the Heathers and
the goth. You don't remember her being goth in Beetlejuice and
Yes, I do, but I don't know that I would have.
come on, Shell, put it together.
I wouldn't have thought of hers when.
I'm sorry. If nothing else comes from this episode, I need the walk of shame video from you. I need to see you stumbling around in the dark, putting on a shoe, not able to find the other shoe, walking down the street with a broken heel.
Singing doo-wah diddy diddy dum diddy do.
No, one of my very first videos on TikTok, like early TikTok 3 years ago with me, was a walk of shame video from the 80s. It
Really?
Yeah, I should republish it. That was what it was.
You did a walk of shame in the 80s?
Yeah.
You were a slut. You were only like 16.
No, I meant I recreated an 80s walk of shame. Oh, wait. Someone's at the front door again. Did you hear that?
Wow, you started young. You might not have been stealing, but you weren't lying when you said you did other things.
I did not mean it that way. I meant I recreated an 80s one. Me and my era would have been the 90s.
90s, exactly. That's when I would expect it.
Yeah, just saying.
All right, I'm going to end this episode before we go on to that topic because I got stories I could tell, and I'm not gonna.
Your trips to the woods.
No comment.
No. I'm not doing it. I almost said it. Forget it. I'm saving it for another day. So this was me. Who's Chris? I think you were last week. So Shelley, I think it's back to you next week.
Is it back to me again?
Yeah.
I think so. Chris had a music one last week,
That's right.
I was traveling, so we missed the week before, and then we had some. But we're back. So
we're back. I will figure out a cool set of topics for us.
All right, guys. I had fun.
You're going to start to see us marketing this as well. So please tell your friends. We're going to get out.
Yeah, we're going to try to do a push. And
let people know that we're doing this.
I think it's worth watching. Michelle says, laughing my ass off, not touching it. Michelle, if we're going back to the 80s, I promise you nobody else did either.
That's what she said.
Probably. I can't. No, I'm not even going there. I'm not even.
So yeah, we think this is worth watching. We hope it's worth watching. I know it's a very well-kept secret at the moment. But we're hoping it becomes a little less of a well-kept secret. So
that's what John heard a lot of times back in the day, Michelle.
That's who I was talking to. I'm like, if we're talking about me in the 80s, believe me, no one was touching it. Well, someone was touching it, but
someone was, but it just
someone.
Oh man.
All right, guys. That's what I said. Thank you guys for joining in. We will see you next week, same time. And for now, this is John saying I'll see you later. And
this is Shell. See you later.
This is Chris. Stay rad, everybody.
Stay rad, everybody. Boom. And we're out.
Are we?